really gives us a lot to think about. We know that each of us was expecting things to be a little different by this time. And it seems like the COVID is getting worse. It seems as though there are more outbreaks, and of course we know that there are new strains of COVID that have come out, and so we have a year of challenges before us. But I want us to know that as we trust God, as we place our faith in Him, there's something we don't have to worry about, and that is Him abandoning us. God will be here. He will not let us go. When I was a little boy, my father and mother would take my family to the beach. My dad loved the ocean. As much as anywhere he had ever been in his life, he loved the ocean. And he would go out early in the morning and he would stay until dark. He loved it. He'd come home and get a tomato sandwich, and then he would go back. But I can remember as a little boy, Dad picking me up in his arms and taking me out into the crashing waves, and then a little further out into the deep. And Dad would hold me. And I can remember times being petrified by the prospect of Dad dropping me. And me going under the waves or going down into the deep where the unknown was. But Dad held me. And He didn't let me go. And as my boys were growing up, one of my favorite things to do was to pick them up and to take them out into the crashing waves and into the deep. And I would hold them. And I could see the fear in their eyes, and they would cling to me as hard as they could. And all I could do is promise them, I won't let you go. I won't let you go. And now my sons have sons, and I have seen them take their little boys out into the crashing waves and into the deep. And I've seen them hold their sons so firmly. And I know that my boys will not let go of their boys. You see, there was a legacy established. My father, I don't know if he ever got to go to the beach when he was a boy. But there was a legacy established in my father. And I passed that to my sons. And my sons have passed that to their sons, and hopefully their sons will pass it to their sons. It was a legacy of trust. And you and I must ask ourselves a very important question. Are we establishing in this church a legacy of trust, a legacy of faith in God? Is God first in our lives? Are we letting it be known that God is in first place in every aspect of our lives? There's nothing magic about a relationship with God. It doesn't just happen. It's something that we work at. It's something that we strive for. I read a book by Lori Beth Jones. The book was called Grow Something Besides Old. And she said in the book that she remembers one Halloween evening, as she was getting very low on candy, there was an unusual amount of children who were coming to her door. And she can remember that moment when she gave away her last piece of candy. And all she could do from that point on was give away nickels and dimes and quarters. And she said she particularly remembered this one little girl, maybe 5 years old, coming to the door, knocking on the door, and Lori Beth opened the door, And she looked at this little girl who was dressed up. She was dressed up with a crown on her head, and she had a wand in her hands. She had come as a fairy princess. And so Lori Beth reached over where she had placed some money, and she picked up 2 quarters, and she put those 2 quarters in the little girl's bag. And she said to the little girl, now tomorrow you can go to the store and you can turn these 2 quarters into candy. And the little girl looked at her and said, "Lady, this ain't no magic wand." But what I'm going to tell you today is not a magic wand. It is about what it takes to work at a relationship with God. And I want to ask you right now, you just need to maybe bow your head and think about this for just a moment. Is God in first place in my life? Is God first in my life? And if God is not first in my life, what is in the way? What's in the way? Jesus says to us, if you really love me, if you really love me the way that you ought to love me, then everything else ought to look like you're hating it. Now, I know that Jesus was using hyperbole. He was saying to us we need to be serious about our relationship. And he was saying everything else ought to pale in comparison to the relationship that you have established with God, the one that He wants to establish with you. One day, you and I will face the Maker. One day, you and I will stand before God, and He is going to say to us, where did I place in your life? Where's the evidence that I was number one in your life? I'm the one who molded you. I'm the one who breathed life into you. Where did you place me? He's going to ask us something else. He's going to say, did you know my son Jesus? Did you know the one who I sent to die for you so that you could experience eternity with me? And if you really knew Jesus, did you live in a way that reflected Jesus to the world? Let me tell you, when it really boils down to it, this is all about stewardship. Wow. That preacher is going to preach about money. I'm not going to preach about money, but I am going to tell you about what it means to be a good steward. A good steward gives to his master what is his master's. And God has created all things. There is not one thing that exists that has not been created by God or inspired by God. And so when we say to ourselves, what is God's and what is mine? We have to realize that there is nothing that is mine. There is nothing that is yours. It is all God's. Every bit of it. Every breath you take, every heartbeat that you have, every penny in your pocket, every penny in your banking account, everything that you think you own, all of that is God's. And that's what realizing what a good steward is when we give to God everything that we have. Surrendering it all, saying to God, it's not mine, Lord. Thank you for allowing me to keep it for a while as I have been granted this life. The Greeks had a word, oikonomos. Oikonomos. And the word oikonomos, you can almost hear the word economics in it, can't you? Oikonomos. And oikonomos meant stewardship. It meant giving to God, giving to the Master what is the Master's. And so today, the question is, have I given God what He deserves? Have I given to God what is God's? Is God first? We are talking these weeks about our purpose as the church. Our purpose as the church is to love God, to exalt God above anything and everything else, that God comes first in every decision, that God comes first in every thought, that God comes first in every expression we offer, the words that we speak, the actions that we take. God would come first. As a church, we said this is what we want as the primary thought. God will be first. And second to that, we want to encourage one another. We want to lift one another up. We want to educate one another. We want to love on one another. We want to offer mercy to one another. But everything that we do for one another, we want to point to God. And then we said, hey, you know what? All of this love that we're sharing with one another and all this desire to serve God leads us to a place that we cannot abandon. We've got to make a difference in the world. It's easy to love the person sitting in the pew beside of you. But it's a little more difficult to love the people in the world who think differently from us. But part of our purpose is to make a difference in this world. So we are about loving God, growing together, and making a difference. That's who we are. That's who we say we are. And if we say we are that, then let's be that. And this isn't just a purpose statement for our church, but let it be the purpose statement for our lives. Let our lives be about loving God and about growing in relationship with one another and about making a difference in this world. That's a great purpose statement for our personal lives. But today, we talk about putting God first, about being good stewards, allowing God to be seen, to allow God to be experienced above everything else, and to show God that we love Him by offering Him all that we are and all that we have. I'll guarantee you that every person who is in this sanctuary today and every person who is watching this by computer or however it is that you are seeing or hearing this message, I'll guarantee you that each of us in our lives has something that we're holding on to, something that we've been unwilling to surrender, something that we have held back, something that we've let us be held down by that has gotten in the way of God. And we've got to let go of that. And we've got to embrace the relationship that God wants us to have with Him. What is it, my friend, that you are holding on to or that is holding you down that's keeping you from letting go of everything and saying, God, it's yours? What is it? Only you know that. Well, maybe you think only you know that. Maybe people around you are aware of the fact that you put other things in front of God. Maybe you've been unafraid of your life. Maybe you've been a little bit proud of your life. But today I come and I ask you to consider what you Jern sang a moment ago. Coming before the Lord and laying down that most precious thing that you have held more sacred than God. Are you willing to break open the alabaster box? Jesus saw the problem. He saw the issue in the lives of people who were around Him. And He wanted them to know what it meant to really sacrifice. And you may be asking yourself this question, why in the world is the preacher preaching on stewardship? Why in the world? I mean, let's be honest. Tonight we're going to be having a church conference. And as long as I've been here, this church has never done as well financially. Never. Never ever. We got money in the bank. We're not having to worry about being in the red. Things are going pretty doggone good for us. So why is the preacher talking about stewardship? Why is the preacher talking about giving everything? Because when things are going good, we tend to hold back. We want to hold on to it. We think everything's going to be smooth, everything's going to be fine and dandy. And so maybe we can hold back our part because everybody else has been doing their part. But do you see what happens? When you hold back your part, you don't receive the blessing that God wants you to experience by surrendering everything you're supposed to give. We are a body. A body. But it takes everybody in this body doing what everybody in this body is supposed to do for this body to be efficient. For this body to accomplish what God has placed us here to do. We're taught to honor God in every season. Not just when things are going bad or when things are going good, because it's easy for us to call out the name of God when things are going bad, when things are desperate for us. We will call on the name of the Lord. Lord, save me. Lord, help me. Lord, walk with me through my problem. Lord, help me get to feeling better. Lord, help my wife, my son, my daughter, my husband to feel better. It's easy then. But when things are going good, when life is going the way we want it to, and everything's hitting on all the cylinders, we tend not to think about God. But he says, think about me when things are good and when things are bad. When things are good, bless me more. Give what you can give. When things are bad, I'm going to take care of you. God prepares us for something that's going to challenge us. I'm telling you, the reason that the bank account looks so good right now is because there's a challenge coming. Within the first few weeks that I came to this church, I shared with you when things are going really, really good in the church, the devil's going to attack. He's going to come after you. He's going to come after you. He's going to come after the church. He's going to come after anything that's good and holy and upright. Because the devil hates goodness. The devil hates God. And the devil really hates it when we serve God. And when we surrender to God, the devil's going to say to you, you fool, you should have held on to your money. You shouldn't have surrendered that lust or that sin that you've got in your heart because that makes you feel so good. That's what the devil's going to tell you. That's what that's the trick he's going to play on you. But the truth is that God will never abandon you nor forsake you. He won't turn his back on you. When things are good or when things are bad, he's there to walk with you. As I said a little bit earlier, Jesus understood the challenge. He recognized when he was walking through Jerusalem and other areas, he would see people really struggling with their spirituality, with their relationship with God. He would see them going through the motions. You know, that's the thing. So many people just go through the motions. And it means absolutely nothing to them to have a relationship with God. They found themselves in a rut spiritually, and the reason they're in a rut is because that relationship has never grown. And so, because their spirituality is in a rut, they want to pull other people down with them. When somebody's drowning and you are trying to save them, I'll guarantee you they will try to pull you down with them. That's just the way it works. And in life, when we are drowning spiritually, we are struggling in our relationship with God, we want to make sure other people are suffering too. And so we pull people down. But God never called anybody to pull another down. He says, lift one another up. Encourage one another. Love on one another. Extend each other mercy. There's no room for foolishness in the church. And so if you feel like pulling somebody down, walk away. Walk away. Jesus saw the struggle. He saw the religious elitists beating up emotionally, verbally, spiritually on those people who needed to have a relationship with God. And one day, when Jesus was in the temple, he stood off in a corner and he watched. You see, what we give and how we give has an awful lot to do with how much we love and what we love. And so Jesus is standing there in the corner and he sees the scribes. He sees the religious elitists. And they are walking by the treasury. And they are tossing their coins. And I'm going to tell you that the treasury may have looked a bit like this little brass bucket. And there were religious leaders who were walking by, and they would take handfuls of coins and they would toss them in there. And you can only imagine the noise it would make and the attention it would draw. And Jesus kept on watching because he knew that someone would come with a heart that was sincere. Is your heart sincere? Is your heart sincere today? Do you come to the Lord willing to lay it all down? I want to share with you scripture out of the book of Luke. Luke 12, beginning in verse 38. I want you to hear what Jesus says about this. And in his teaching, he said, beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes and like greetings in the marketplaces and have the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at feasts, who devour widows' houses for a pretense to make long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. And he sat down opposite the treasury and he watched. He watched the people putting money into the offering box. Many rich people put in large sums. Remember all of those coins being rolled around in the offering box? And a poor widow came, and she put in 2 small copper coins, barely a tinkle. And he called out his disciples to him, and he said to them, truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the offering box, for they all have contributed out of their abundance, what was left over. But she, out of her poverty, has put in everything that she had, all she had to live on. I'll tell you, that story doesn't get to you, nothing will. Because how many times have we given to God out of our abundance? How many times have we given to God what is left over? How many times have we given to God our spare change instead of giving everything? I'm not asking you to close out your savings account, to hand us your 401k. You have to be thinking about taking care of your family. But I am saying to you, give to God what is God's. Surrender everything and allow God to multiply that. when Jesus saw that poor widow woman offer 2 little copper pennies that may have equaled a penny today, He recognized the depth of her sacrifice. Everything she had, look, everything she had, everything she was dependent upon for the next week in order to be able to have food, that was given to God. She trusted God that much. She was willing to climb up into His arms and walk out into the crashing waves. She was willing to go into the depths with God because she was holding on, and she knew He wouldn't let her down. She trusted Him with everything. And God recognized that. Sometimes we don't give to God what is God's, but I want to tell you, within this church family and in other church families I've been a part of, I have heard people say, I just can't do it. I just can't give. I just can't give a tithe. I understand. Believe me, I understand. I've been there. I've been in that place where I didn't trust God. I said I did. I came to church every Sunday. I was part of Sunday school. I even taught youth groups. I worked with, but I didn't trust God. I wore my Christianity on my sleeve, but it wasn't in my heart. And when it's in your heart, you have to live it. And it means that you lay it all down and you say, God, guess what? I'm trusting that when I give to you, I'm trusting that you know that this is best for me. God doesn't need your money. God does not need your money. But He knows that when you are giving, He knows that when you are sharing, when you are offering the best of what you have and the best of who you are, when you are doing this, then you are ready to worship Him. You're ready to be in a relationship with Him. Are you? Are you? Are you really ready to worship? You came today to worship. You came today to worship. But in the back of your mind and in the corner of a dark place in your heart, you think there's something you can hide from God. You think that there's something that you can hold back from God. You believe that there's something that you don't need to give to God. But today, He says, let it go. Let it go. You may think that you're giving everything to me, but when you surrender everything to me, listen to what Jesus said about that little widow woman. Truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the offering box because they are giving out of their abundance. But she has given all. Oh, there's so much more I wish I could say today. There's so much more I wish I could express to you. But until you lay it all down at the feet of Jesus Christ, until you go to the cross and you lay everything down, He can't bless you. But He wants to. Oh, He stands ready. He stands ready. He calls you. He says, climb up into my arms. I promise you, when you climb up into my arms, the waves may be crashing around you. Things may be going haywire around you, but I will not let you sink. He loves you. And He wants you to experience the fullness of His grace and mercy today, but you, I have to surrender it all. Will you today? Will you today just say, you know what? 2021 is His year. I'm giving it to Him. And I promise if you give Him 2021, you'll want to give Him 2022. And 2023 and the rest of your life, you'll want to give to Him, because you will see how good is our God. How good is our God. Today, we offer an invitation, and that is, come where you are with all the luggage you're carrying and bring it to the cross and lay it down and live the life that He's got planned for you. It's a good life, and He won't leave you. So this morning, I'm going to ask you to stand, and let's sing together this invitation.